Hey everyone, my name is David Rao, and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, on Instagram, on Pinterest, on Twitter, and a variety of other platforms when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. So I'm really excited to be sharing with you again tonight. This is week 9 of Musical Mondays for the fall semester, unless you're tuning in from down under, which I guess would be the spring semester. But this is week 9, and I've been sharing some of my lesson ideas and ways to adapt all along the way. Tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about how you might plan for a substitute teacher, because it is different, just like everything else. You might know I'm a new teacher at my building. I'm new at this building this year, and one of the things they have us all do is to leave an emergency sub binder in the front office. And I went to my principal and was like, so none of my sub plans work anymore, and I'm not sure how to leave all of this stuff, so can I get an extension on this is too? And I was like, and also I don't have all the normal stuff that you would normally put in there. So she was like, sure, but you need to turn it in sometime. So I wanted to share with you some of the things that I am putting in that sub binder, or just in my regular sub plans, some of the things that go into how you might plan for a substitute, keeping COVID-19 in mind, because it's a little different. So I would just share some of those things tonight. Before I get into any of that, just a quick reminder, if you want to hear any, or you want to see any of the links or resources or anything else that I mentioned in the video tonight, I always post it on a page on my website, makemomentsmatter.org. You can go to the links page there and scroll down and find Musical Mondays Recap 2020-2021. Or if you're on Facebook, you can just click the link in the caption for this video and it'll take you right there. Or Instagram, you can go to my LinkedIn profile and click through and go there. If there's something that I talk about that I don't list on that page, shoot me a message or an email, and I'll be happy to add that. But that's the links page if you want it. And as always, there's a Facebook group that I started, Every Moment Matters Music Education Community. And we've been sharing some cool stuff in that group. So feel free to join that and get ideas from folks in that group. Okay, one more thing. I did mention this last week, but I know that Halloween is quickly approaching. So if you're interested, I added a new thing in my store. I've never tried it before. My Teachers Pay Teacher store. It has all the Halloween resources I've ever made and anything I'm going to make in the future. And it's all in one bundle. So it's called Everything Halloween. So if you're interested, it's there. I just thought I'd mention that because I don't... I don't always talk about new products or whatever that's come out, and this is one of those it has everything Halloween. So if you're I just want the bulletin boards, the games, the whatever, I want all of it, the centers, I want everything. Well, it's there if you're interested. So I thought I'd mention that. And one more thing coming up. So if you like these Musical Mondays videos, or if you've ever seen me do a workshop and you'd like to see more, I'm doing a virtual workshop for the Tidewater area ORF chapter, which is based out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. But it's an online virtual workshop, and you don't have to be a local member to attend. So if you're I'd love to come to that workshop, you still can do it. It's this Saturday. I believe it's 9 to noon Eastern. So if you're not Eastern, you'll need to adjust your thinking. Maybe get up a little earlier than you would otherwise. But it's all about being intentional in your classroom, how to choose songs, books, games, things that are inclusive of all peoples. We're going to talk a little bit about how to research folk songs and plan, so that there are a lot of songs that are popping up as maybe having a sordid history or a troubled past. Well, how do you look for that? How do you find that? And so we're going to talk a little bit about research, about how you can better research the songs that you're teaching to kids and how you can plan to be more inclusive in general. So that's happening this weekend. Some lesson ideas, games, resources, lots of that through Tidewater ORF. The following Saturday, if you want to join us, the Greater Milwaukee ORF Dimensions, the ORF chapter there, is hosting a workshop, and that's all going to be about the art of possibility. So lesson ideas, things that you might use. Of course, if you're wondering what kind of lessons, not just COVID lessons that you could use next year, the year after, but also you could adapt in COVID-19. So I don't want to share anything that's this is a really fun lesson, how exciting. You can't use it until you can, folk dance or whatever again. So I'm going to be sharing that with Milwaukee a week from Saturday. So if you're interested, again, you don't have to be a local member to do that. You could just join us and be a part of the fun. And if you want to sign up and register for either of those workshops, there are links to them on my blog under the About Me section, or you can go to either the Tidewater Area Orph Chapter website or Facebook group or the Greater Milwaukee Orph Chapter and sign up another place. But I'm really excited about both. It's 2 different workshops. Like, I mean, you could come to both if you wanted. But there's one happening this week and one the following weekend. So I just wanted to let people know about that in case you're interested and want to have more professional development opportunities. So things to think about as we go ahead. All right, last week I talked a little bit about, I always talk about books that I'm using, books that I'm interested in, books that are inspiring my lessons. And so I wanted to share, I asked folks about books featuring Indigenous people, and especially Native American people, because that's our story. That's those are our First Nations, really, and the Native American people in this country. So I'm interested in Native stories from all around the world, but especially about Native Americans, because I want my students to know more. I want to know more. I want to be more inclusive and more understanding of all these amazing cultures. And so many of you have sent me some great ideas about books that I might consider including. I've already purchased some of those and I'm having them sent to me, or I'm looking for more. I started a list on my Amazon page. I've talked about my Amazon ideas page before, where I can list just all the different books and things that I'm using or have tried. And so I made a list on there of just books about Indigenous people. And it includes Indigenous folks from around the world. So I've listed some of those. One of the books that came in that I'm really excited about is this one called Maria Tallchief, the First Native American Ballerina. It is not like a narrative book, like it doesn't tell a story in sort of the same way as many of the other books that I use, but I still think it's a great resource. It talks about Maria, and it talks about she was known for her roles in the Nutcrackers, the Sugar Plum Fairy. I'm here for anything Nutcracker, so I go all about that. But you're going to learn about her life and her talents and everything else, as well as learning about other well-known Native Americans. So it goes through, it talks about her and her family and her life. It talks about growing up and her influences. And it at first I was like, oh, there are a lot of stock photos. But the great thing is that the reason that they're there is because there weren't a ton of photos of Maria Tallchief that they could put in here. But also, as they're talking about growing up, or moving to Los Angeles, or learning to be a dancer, this is giving really good examples of what kids could maybe connect with. That's the cool thing about this book, is that it gives some of the photos you're like, oh, sort of stock photo-y, but it gives photos that kids can yes, it attaches to their schema and helps them. So as you're talking about Maria's life, and as you're talking about what she was like growing up, you're giving kids these great images that help them connect and understand with what they maybe already know. So it's a super cool book. You could do it's long. It's how long is it? Oh, it doesn't even have page numbers. It's so long. But it has tons and tons and tons of information, things about her life, things about her job and her career. So that's really fantastic. Some of the information that they're giving. And then towards the end, let's see if I can get to that part. Then it goes through and talks about other well-known Native Americans. And it gives just one page. So really, really condensed. 1 page or 2 pages about that person and their life. So the Squanto page is actually pretty long. And it gives a lot of really great information. So it's nice to be able to talk about who Maria Tallchief was and then give a little bit more context about what it meant when she left and moved to Los Angeles, and why it was a big deal that she was this ballerina. So there are a couple other Maria Tallchief books that I'm interested in, one that I purchased, one that I'm looking at, and so this was just the very first one I got, and it has a lot of great information. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to use it. Honestly, I think well, obviously I'm going to use it around this time of year, Indigenous Peoples Day today. And I'm going to set it out. I'm going to show it. I'm going to make sure that my kids know about it. I'm really trying to find resources that would go along with her life, videos, stories, recordings, things that would match up that we could maybe add to that and build a lesson around. I'm really considering putting it in a substitute lesson plan and having them read portions of the book and then having some sort of follow-up, either like a listening worksheet or a reflection worksheet, something that would go along so that kids can sort of talk through and work through what they've learned. But it's just a really great resource about this amazing dancer who was a pioneer for what she did. She blazed the trail for other people. So it's just a really cool book and a new one to me. And it was recommended by someone after last week's Musical Monday video. They said you should try this out. So if you have other recommendations about books, especially about Native Americans, I would love to hear those recommendations. Please send me a message or an email, makemomentsmatter@gmail.com with those ideas, because I'm trying to bulk up that part of my classroom library. And it's just, there are not a lot of books with Native American protagonists right now, especially those that are like music books, but I don't care. Any book with Native American protagonists, I can make a lesson around, or I can try, or I can add in to help students grow their understanding. So any recommendations are great recommendations, and I would love if you would send them my way. Okay, speaking of books, I went to Marshall's this weekend. I was looking for a pillow. My pillow's old. I need a new pillow. I'm a side sleeper. Any recommendations on that? Send them my way. No, but I was looking for a pillow. And then, of course, I was there, so I went through the children's literature section, and oh my gosh, let me share what I found. So one that I already knew, well, actually a couple that I already knew, and then one that was new to me. So one of the ones that was new, that I knew about but I just never purchased, was this book, Every Little Thing. It's based on the song Three Little Birds by Bob Marley. Super cool inside. And it's actually written by Bob Marley's daughter. So, Cedella Marley. Anyway, it's a really cool book, beautifully illustrated. And the first part goes, rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. Three little birds pitched by my doorstep, singing sweet songs of melodies pure and true, saying this my message to you. Don't worry about a thing, because every little thing's going to be all right. Those are words that are like basically a direct quote from the Bob Marley song, if you know it. And then it goes on, ran to the playground, laughed with my friends and play. Three little birds perch on the swing set, whistling these words, these harmonies sweet in the air. Sometimes you just need to show you care. And you say, don't worry about a thing. Every little thing's going to be all right. So it goes through and it talks about, trying to help in the kitchen, making a huge mess. Everything's going to be okay. So like, hey, guess what? This would be great for an SEL lesson, right? For social emotional learning, it'd be great to help kids who are stressed out right now, because I think a lot of kids are. So it's really cool. You could absolutely connect this to the song. I don't know if you want to play the song in your classroom. I was looking for a video or something to go along with it, and I was like, I mean, it's tricky because you're like, who was Bob Marley? Well, if you show like anything that's really documentary that is not geared for kids, it's going to probably go into like pot or whatever, because there are a lot of photos of that. But so like, how do you find a video that works really well? And I thought I'd found one. I looked on YouTube, found this fun cartoon, and then halfway through the little pig starts smoking weed. So I was like, can't show that. So instead, I found this really great video that is like a group in Hawaii who took the song and sang it through and then did with a Hawaiian translation of the lyrics. And I'll show you just a tiny little part here if I can. So, hello. So I'm trying to do this so I don't have to turn the screen around.
Don't worry about a thing. 'Cause every little thing
Doing a little hula.
be alright. Singing, don't worry about a thing, yeah. 'Cause every little thing is gonna be alright. rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. Three little birds pitch by my doorstep.
So just a super cute little video. Let me scrub ahead to the part that is in Hawaii. So it'd be super cool to share this with students if you wanted to share the original book, or if you wanted to share the book, you wanted to play maybe the original song. This is a cool video that you could show to them that shows like an adaptation of the song. And it could give you a segue to talk about, you know, where Bob Marley was from, maybe why he'd be popular in Hawaii, why he's popular around the world. I mean, you could talk about whatever you wanted, but this gives you a fun way to do that using the famous song, using stories about Bob Marley, the story written by his daughter, and then the cool new adaptation. It would be super, super fun to share that with kids. So I got the book, and actually I looked at it on Amazon when I got home after I'd already bought it, and I got a great deal because the one on Amazon, the board book, is like $7 or $8, and I got it at Marshall's for $2.99. Ah, hooray. Not so much of a great deal on this other one. So I got, There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Turkey. I think I saved like $1 from the Amazon price. But it's always worth it when you go to Marshall's or TJ Maxx to look at their books, because, or wherever you go to look at their books, because you never know what you're going to find on sale. So another one to add to my sub-tub or add to my bookshelf, another reiteration of the There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed, name your holiday or thing or whatever. There's a million of these books, a million in this specific series with this illustrator, Jerry Lee, but there are a million of books like this. So you can get a ton of these books. In fact, I have an entire list on Amazon just devoted to all the different iterations of this book. Last year I got There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Dreidel for Hanukkah. There was a bold lady who wanted a star, about a lady who like goes up in a rocket ship. Like there are a million versions, right? And this is like prime sub-tub material for me, because even if you get a sub who's like, I don't really want to sing, they'll do Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly. So like, okay, sure. You know, like they like that and they feel comfortable with that and they like telling the story and they think it's funny. So I like to put this in my sub-tub. Having different versions, especially around different holidays, is great, because then you could have them do the original and you could say, hey, it's Halloween. Do you want to do There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Bat? Or, you know, There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Shamrock, or whatever the St. Patty's Day one is. So these are not expensive. You could even put them on your list of books, like Please Buy Me books, and have folks donate them as they can. So like, for instance, I have, you know, my PTO, sometimes we'll say like, hey, do you have a wish list of things for your classroom? Well, like $5 book or something from Scholastic is totally doable. Or send them the list of all of the books and maybe you'll get 4 or 5. Like, you never know. But having a list like that where you could say like, hey, I've got this list of books I'd really like to have XYZ. It's good to have that. And if you can send a link to parents or whatever, that's going to make, or PTO or whoever, sending a link like that makes them like, oh, sure, I'll buy. Or, you know, they're sitting at their iPad watching the evening news or 90 Day Fiance or whatever they're watching. They're like, oh, yeah, and sometimes we'll get them for you. So this is another one of those great books to put on the list that folks can get you for your classroom. Like I said, I have a whole list on Amazon of all just Old Lady Who Swallowed books, because there are 1,000 of them. Okay, one more that I had never heard of, that I had never seen, was another board book that I was really excited about, and I was very interested. And this is called Say Hello by Rachel Isadora. And I always like look for books that seem interesting, thinking like, well, how can I include this? Okay, well, let me just read it a little bit and then I'll share what I was thinking. So, yeah, I'll see if it shows up there. Carmelita gets up early in the morning. She helps her mama make their favorite breakfast, huevos con tocino. Today we'll visit Abuela Rosa, Mama says. After breakfast, Carmelita hurries and gets dressed, then gets Manny. They walk all the way down 9th Avenue. Buenos dias, Senor Enrico calls. Buenos dias. And then there are fun other little things you could read here, like bodega, pollo, arroz, ensalada, cerdo. Like you could read some of the things here if you wanted. Shalom, says Mrs. Rosen and her children. Shalom. Woof, says. And then again, you're getting to expose your kids to other things. So as they see these other things, they're like, oh, maybe I've never seen that in my city. Maybe I have. And it's fun to get to share that. They stop in at the Japanese restaurant to say hello. Konnichiwa. Konnichiwa. So, and it says Osaka up here. It's just giving those elements of things maybe from other cultures that you might see. Down the street, they meet Joseph and his parents who have just come back from Kenya. Jambo. Jambo. So they're all saying hello in different languages. You get some French, you get, all different sorts of things in here. Of course, each one of these is just sort of like a token of that culture. It's not going to be the exact representation, but you're getting to see some really cool things. And it's funny because it's like, bonjour, bonjour, your dog speaks French too, the woman says, because their dogs are saying woof to each other. So it's just a sort of a cute little book. Let me see. Oh, and then they get to see Mama Rosa, which is their grandma, abuela, and they go have ice cream. Super cute at the end, and you're seeing just all different kids from the whole neighborhood showing up together. Well, last year I did a concert. I was going to do a concert before COVID canceled it, all about folk songs from around the world or cultures from around the world, and sort of bring that in. And this would be a great tie-in book that you could either use to introduce the program, that you could use as sort of a narrative to draw things together. You could just use to expose kids on how to say hello in different languages. I mean, there's so many cool uses for it. And I mean, I'm already envisioning like, oh, I could use it for this. I could use it for this. I could use it for this. And it's sort of a fun book, but one that just I found at Marshall's and I was like, I am inspired, So anyway, Say Hello by Rachel Isadora. I found it on Amazon. Honestly, I did not get a very good price. I think the Marshall's price is like maybe 50 cents less than Amazon. So don't feel like, oh, I got to rush out to Marshall's. No, you could just get it on Amazon. That'd be fine. Or whatever. Or find it. The publisher is not listed. Hold on. Oh, it's Penguin. So you could probably get it anywhere. But another just a fun book that I found. I was like, would be so great for my classroom, and I could tie it in so many different ways. So especially, if you had it on your shelf and you're like, oh, rats, I got 3 more minutes. Ooh, we just did a song from France, or we just did a song from Kenya, or we should whatever, like, perfect. You could pull it out and use it, and it would be great to tie in at the end of a lesson or whenever you want it for any grade K1, 2, or whatever. And what I've said before about board books, what's really cool is that the problem is that they are small, right? The nice thing about board books is you can easily put them into a center. So if you're doing centers and you're rotating and whatever, maybe post-COVID, these are really sturdy and you don't have to worry about them getting ripped or hurt, right? For the most part. What's not so great about board books is they are very small. So especially if you're spaced out because of COVID and there are kids way far away, they probably won't be able to see the pictures. So what I would do is I would get my document camera or something so that I could zoom in on the pictures and show it as I'm reading it. And then you could even, as you're doing that, if they're going through the neighborhood or whatever, you could show some elements. You could be like, oh, it says patisserie, which is a French word meaning, patisserie, baked goods. And you could show them like, oh, look, and you could point out different things. You could even talk about the art. There's so much you could do. But if you had that document camera, you can zoom in and point on that. But if you just have the board book, that's a little tricky. So maybe you want a larger format, or maybe you could just use a digital means to sort of enhance and get the picture a little bit bigger using your document camera. But another great book. So Every Little Thing, There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Turkey, and Say Hello are my newest books. Oh, and Maria Tallchief are my newest books, and are just going to fit really well in my classroom and got pretty inexpensively at Marshall's. But shop around. I've listed them all on Amazon, so you can find them there if you want. But like I said, the only one that I got on super sale was Every Little Thing. So get from wherever you want. Okay, so I'm going to talk as much as I can now about substitute lesson plans. I get stressed out about substitute lesson plans, I'll just admit. And even though this is year 10 for me teaching, and I should have this like great cache of lesson plans to pull from, and I'm at a new school, so like they've not seen any of my lesson plans, like it's, or my sub plans, like, ooh, cool opportunity. I still get stressed out thinking about it, especially now because of COVID-19, like thinking like, well, I can't do that because this thing, or I gotta alter that because of this thing. Like it just adds a layer of stress when, if you're planning for a sub, probably something is happening that you don't need extra stress. You got to go to the doctor, or you need to take care of somebody who's sick, or you're sick, or you just need to not be at school for whatever reason. It's not the time to stress. And so I keep thinking about like, what can I reuse? What can I, what can I pull? What can I change? Right? So that's sort of where I'm going into with my sub plans. That's what I'm thinking about. Like, how can I alter? How can I change? How can I adapt what I already have? How can I make this less stressful for me and for the sub? And I'll just say, you don't have to have Wonder Woman lessons or Superman lessons. Like, they don't have to be like the world's most engaging, amazing, wonderful lessons. I have agonized for hours over lesson plans for substitute teachers before, and usually when I like spend the most time like really making sure every element is covered and taken care of, that's the time that they have to pull my sub, or school's canceled because of snow day or whatever. Like I've had all these things happen, or like I come back and the sub note says, great day, did the limbo. What? That wasn't in any of my plans. And you did the limbo for 6 hours? Hold on. I mean, like, you just never know. So like that's why I'm like, I'm not going to agonize about sub plans anymore. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to leave some fun stuff, and then whatever, like if it doesn't get done, I'm not going to have my heart broken. I can just push it out into my next sub lesson and it'll be just fine. So some things I wanted to share about subs. We're going to start with some of the things you can steal and use. Then I want to talk about books, and then make sure I talk about technology before we finish. So one of the things that I have learned is really helpful is going to your closet. I'll just admit, I don't use the textbooks very often. It's like making music, share the music, spotlight on music. I've never used them really, because I did, I did ORF training, and I've had such great experiences in the past that like I just don't use the books very much. Not to say that that's bad if you use the books, but I just never really have. And so there's this big resource that we paid a lot of money for because a textbook company convinced my district to buy it, or because we were up on the list or whatever and we got it. And I just have never really used them. And so I learned, like, pull those things off the shelf and see what's in there. So for example, I pulled out just my Spotlight on Music huge book, right? And one of the things in here is that it is written, like if you go to the lessons are written like for anyone. I mean, these lessons are honestly written so that like if you don't have training at all, you can use them, or if you do have training, you can use them, or I mean, there are lots of cool things that you can do, even if you don't know maybe a lot of the background or whatever. So the cool thing is that they've written it as if maybe you don't have training, or you need a little bit of help, or you're not sure about the framework of a lesson. This is great because, and what else is great about these is that like if you have a sub who's like normally a classroom teacher sub, who's like not gonna feel comfortable singing or pulling out music resource or whatever. These are written for people who are not necessarily music people. Some of these lessons. So like it goes through, it tells you all the materials you need, it tells you the skills, and it like scripts out the lesson for you. And so that is like perfect for someone who's maybe not a music teacher. So pull these out, and you can find the lessons you think that they'd be able to pull and use, and then just add that into your sub plan. They're written in a way. The other thing is that like if it's coming from like Pearson or Macmillan or whatever, If your substitute teacher has been in a classroom setting and is like a classroom, like a second grade sub or a third grade sub or whatever, they're used to seeing this. They're used to seeing this format. They're used to seeing the layout. They're used to seeing all of this because Pearson or McGraw-Hill or whoever has formatted their music book just like all their other books they make. So if you take these lessons and you pull them, a lot of times subs can do it even if they're like, I'm not a music person. So for example, if you find one that's like a listening lesson, or you find one that is a simple song, or you find one that you think that they would be able to pull, the cool thing about these lessons is that it'll give like the same, like a basic lesson outline, and then it'll say like, here are all the cool extra things. A language arts link, a history and culture link, footlights, story time. So there are all these fun things that you can just pull into the lesson, and this gives you the framework. Sometimes for me, it's like I don't have any trouble finding the extras that go with this, but it's like, how do I get started, or what do I do? What would maybe work? So coming here and getting like the base and then building a framework around it makes the lesson a lot easier to craft. So go in, grab your textbooks, find some things that you think might be good. Obviously, you're not going to be able to use every lesson, but like pull a couple and just go through, and maybe you'll find like, I want to use that lesson myself or not. So it's nice to have this as sort of a framework to get started. So let me just check a couple comments here. If you have a split population, some in person, some online, have you considered just assigning the online lessons to the in-person kids? Would that be effective? Great question. It might work. My hesitation, because I thought about that, was that a lot of my at-home lessons were singing heavy, and I'm not singing in school. So because of COVID and transmission, we're just not doing singing at school. So I couldn't just like reassign that for in-person learning, even with a sub. So that's tricky. But I think if there are other things, sure. If it was like a composition lesson or a book or whatever, I think you could absolutely pull and repurpose those. If you have the worksheet books, Jennifer says, if you have the worksheet books too, it gives kids something to work on too, even if more like the regular classroom. Yes, exactly. Guess what? The next thing I was going to pull out. A lot of times that these textbook series have extras. So like Teacher Resource Masters, or Festival of World Music, or Learning Music Through Movement. Well, I don't know if a sub could do that. Maybe, right? But the cool thing is that, yes, Jennifer's exactly right. So like these Resource Masters, there are things in here that like I'm never going to do because I don't have time to like print out and cut out and make the listening map for Cobbler with all these things that kids have to cut out on their own. Like, I don't have time for that. But if the kids know that song, or if they have some of those things, it'd be easy for a sub to be able to take the time to do that. The one thing I would say is that now, especially because of COVID, you might have to say to the homeroom teachers, like, would you let them bring down their supply box? Or, because again, I was thinking like with COVID, like I can't just like, we use my pencil jar. No, because you can't have all the kids sharing that or whatever, or scissors. So the kids might need to bring down their supply box, but one, that means you don't have to supply all those things, and two, it means that they're going to take them with them when they go. So that's sort of nice too. But there are a lot of fun little resources in here that you can just take and pull and use as is, So some really cool things that you can find that maybe you already have in the closet at your school or in your in your resource library. So what I also find is that I take sticky notes and go through, and I might stick like, this is a song that I want to teach anyway, or here's this other thing. So as I'm going through, I'm highlighting both for sub lessons or for myself. And then you can, don't feel like you have to do all your grades all at once. Like take one textbook home one weekend and just flip through as you're watching a movie or whatever. And, say like, I want to come back to this on my plan period. I want to look at this later. That's something that's really easy to do. One book that I really like that if you find on like on a teacher website sale or something, you should definitely get is, hold on here. That you should definitely get if you have a chance, you see like on a teacher, like buy, sell, trade, whatever, is this book. It's called New Activities for the Substitute Teacher. It comes from the Making Music curriculum. It's a really fun book because it is like the lessons from inside the textbook, only it's all things that the publisher has decided anyone who doesn't have a music degree could probably do this. So there are quite a few things that I have dog-eared that I've used over and over. They've got some fun lessons for patriotic music that help kids, that come with like worksheets and discussion questions for the substitute teacher and extra things that are really, really easy to just throw into your lessons. So I really actually like some of the things in here. I wouldn't use them for like an in-class thing with me, but there are definitely some great questions, right? Or some great worksheets and things. So like we do the one for God Bless the USA, and it in the worksheet it goes through like, what is a patriotic song? How does it make you feel? Why do people write these? Like it's some really good questions and things that kids can then go through. And if the sub is having a discussion with them, that makes it even more interesting and fruitful. You could even have them go through the questions together as a group. And then it has something easy like this. Name these places. Places that are mentioned in God Bless the USA. See if you can name some of them. So it's then also like they have to be listening and then factor some of that in. So this is totally a book worth getting if you can on like a teacher sale thing, or if you go to your closet and you're like, oh my gosh, I have it. That's cool. And it also comes with a CD that you can use for listening examples, things like that. Totally worth getting if you have the chance to get it. Okay, let's see. Next, I wanted to talk about books that you can use in your classroom, things that might be great for a substitute. So the first thing I would say is books with recordings are awesome. So, for example, books that like you're like, this has a song with it. Sometimes sometimes the cell will be like, there was an old lady who swallowed a fly. It's well known. Sing it. Just go ahead. So finding books that have recordings that make it easier for the sub are great. Because sometimes the sub just doesn't want to sing or doesn't want to do it, or self-conscious or whatever, got pulled, and it's like, I'm not a music person, but okay, I'll do it. So finding books that already have recordings either by the composer or by someone else are great. Or you can record your own version that the sub can just press and play, right? So what you could do is, if you're reading the book, you could record yourself like, hey everyone, I'm so excited to be coming through the projector to redo this book, or whatever. You could do that if you wanted. You could do the thing where you do like a document camera view. There are lots of things. So a couple books I really like. Pretty much everything by Eric Litwin, who's the original creator of Pete the Cat, is great stuff. He writes. He's a great teacher of readers. So the things that he writes are written really well for kids who are learning how to read. So text that's easy to find, easy to pop out. There's repetitive text in there, things that the kids are going to expect to know what's coming. Sometimes you can make connections to like this one connects really well to math concepts. So if your principal's like, well, you got to have something math. Okay, cool. Well, here's a book that sort of does some of that. So that's cool. But this comes with him reading the song and the story. So the original author reading the song and reading the story. So this is a great book to add into your subtub or to just have for your classroom. I got Groovy Joe on a Scholastic Book Fair, so that'd be easy to add into that list of books that you might share with your PTO. But you can get it on Amazon, you can get it at bookstores, you can get it anywhere. You probably get it used now. And the cool thing about this book is it says download the song and story. So if you buy it from like a used bookstore and you're like, oh, it doesn't have the CD, rats. Because sometimes you'll get that book that was like, find more content on the interactive CD, and then the CD is not actually with the book anymore. This one you actually just download from a website. So that makes it really easy to get that interactive content. Another one that I shared just a few weeks ago, this one, Lola's Fandango. I love this one because it's read, it almost sounds like radio theater almost, because it's read by a family. So in the story is a mom and dad and two girls, a younger and an older daughter. And this book is read by a family, a mom and a dad and two daughters. So they sort of like retell the story as if it were their own story. And this is about a girl who wants to do flamenco dancing, really. So it's just beautifully illustrated, really cool book, and it has a pre-recorded track that goes with it. And this one does come with a CD. So worth looking. This one is very inexpensive. I got it, I think, on one of the discount book websites, but I would have to go back and check. So Lola's Fandango, another great book. And then any book that is like based on a song, and I have a whole list on Amazon of these. What a Wonderful World. It's a great song, so fun, very iconic. Kids would hear it and know it. You could just put like your iPod with the song on it, or a link to a YouTube video where, you know, the Louis Armstrong is singing the song, and then you could flip through as it's playing. So that the sub doesn't have to sing, they could just press play and they're like, ooh, you might know this song. Well, let's follow along. Okay, here we go. And then they just, point and play. This is a really nice thing. Again, you could pre-record yourself doing this exact thing, but you could have the sub do it too. Or give both options. Who knows what the sub would want. But these are, again, beautiful illustrations, and it'd be so easy to have like an iPod with the music ready to go. It'd be a great thing to have. But like I said, I have a whole list on Amazon with books of songs that would make this really, really easy. I like having the ones where there is some sort of recording. That's great, but there are tons of other options. So other things I was thinking about for books that you could use. This is another great time to break out some of the books that you're like, I don't, it's sort of long and I don't know what can I do? So like this book, The Music Inside George's Head, which is a story about George Gershwin. This one I got on a discount book website, but let's just read part of it. George heard music all the time, at home, at school, even when he was roller skating down New York's busy streets. Sometimes he was so busy listening to the beautiful music in his head, he didn't pay attention to other things, like getting to school on time. Now, George wasn't a troublemaker, he just couldn't stop thinking about Melody in F, a classical tune he'd heard at the Penny Arcade. So this is cool. You could take this as an opportunity to go through and tell a little bit about George Gershwin. You could pair it with the really cool video on Fantasia 2000 about Rhapsody in Blue, where they animate that. I mean, like, there are so many cool things that you could do with this. It's a little bit longer, but it's really easy for subs to read. I would maybe do it for like second or third grade, but it depends on what you want to do. You could easily find a worksheet or create a worksheet that like goes through and again talks about the style or talks about the composer or tell me details you learned or what do you think about, like you could find cool or create very simple worksheets like that that would go really well with the book. So this one's The Music in George's Head, but I think you could pull basically any composer book or musician book. Another example that I love, and I've shared this one before, is The Dance of the Violin, which tells the story of Joshua Bell, the famous violinist, and how he sort of failed at his very first like chance, competition, and so how he went through. But it talks again about how like music to him tells a story and it comes alive. It's a really cool story, and again, very easy for a sub to read because they don't have to sing or do anything. There's a companion book called The Man with the Violin, which is the story of, again, Joshua Bell, how he went and he played. Was it Joshua Bell? Yes. He played in like a subway. He was just there randomly one day and playing for the people who went by, and nobody really recognized him. So this sort of tells that story. But again, beautiful. It would pair really well with the first book. But you could then do, simple slides on the screen about who Joshua Bell is. You could find a recording on YouTube of him playing or whatever. You could tie all that in. It'd be a very simple lesson plan to do. I'm also looking to, figure out how can I keep my lessons inclusive and my books inclusive through all of this, and how can I expand my students' horizons with these books. So I do have a couple books about the International Sweethearts of Rhythm. This one's called Swing Sisters, and it goes through and talks about, I actually think I shared this last spring. Anyway, it talks about the group and how they were formed and how they got into making music and how the Sweethearts really got their start and what some of the adversity they went through too But a really great story, super simple. It would be very accessible for a bunch of different grades. So I think it'd be a really fantastic book, easy for you to incorporate in a lot of different ways. But it's a story that I don't think a lot of people know, and so for even your sub, it would probably be interesting. I was also thinking about, how can I bring in books that maybe I do use. So Ella Queen of Jazz, I use this in one of my grades in the spring sometimes. I think you could, even if you have a book that you already know, you could pull it back out for other grades, and you could have the sub just go back and reread it, or you could have the sub reread it and then say, but now I have a video to go with it. Or you could say, oh, there's this, but then let's talk about this other aspect. I mean, there are lots of things that you could do if you already have books like this. So I love Ella Queen of Jazz. It's just so bright and eye-catching. The story is great too, but it's just bright and eye-catching. I think that students would really love it, depending on what grade you're using it with. But I think it'd be very easy to incorporate in there too. Again, if you wanted to have a worksheet about and then what about this implication, or what about this other thing, I think it'd be really easy to do that. And then one more book that I fell in love with, and I don't know if I would use this for a sub, but just one that I wanted to pull out and share. Paco and the Drum. And I don't know that I've explicitly shared this one, but it's a super fun... this is probably not a sub book, but I just pulled it out today. I was like, I want to make sure I talk about it. This is one that I think I'm going to put into my lessons in the next couple weeks. The biggest mistake Paco's parents ever made was getting her a drum. They had made mistakes before, like the slingshot, and the llama, and the balloon. But the drum was the biggest mistake. We shouldn't have given her that drum, said her father. What? Said her mother. The drum's too loud. I can't hear you. The drum was a big mistake, said her father. That sounds like a wonderful idea, said her mother, who still couldn't hear anything that he was saying. The next day her father said, Paco, why don't you take your drum outside for a little while? But don't make too much noise. We're just a little frog family that lives in a mushroom, and we don't like drawing attention to ourselves. Paco agreed, and she set out as quietly as she could. It had just rained, and the forest was sparkling like an emerald. And it was very quiet. Too quiet. When I was first reading this book, I got to this page and I was like, this is a book for me. This is good. We're on the right track. Paco started tapping on her drum just to keep herself company, but something stirred behind her. A raccoon playing a banjo started following her, so Paco hit her drum louder. And then a rabbit playing a trumpet started following them, but Paco kept playing her drum. And then a wolf, who couldn't really play anything but was very happy to be near the music, joined in. And Paco still played her drum. But then the wolf ate the rabbit, and Paco stopped playing her drum and faced the wolf and said, "No more eating band members, or you're out of the band." "I'm sorry," said the wolf. And he meant it. Whoa, that was non sequitur. Okay, but love it. All right. And then they all started playing again, and soon there was a crowd of animals playing instruments. And a crowd of animals followed them around, enjoying the music. So, it goes on, and basically they overrun Paco's house and carry off the mom and dad, and they couldn't hear what they were saying, but they were all agreeing they couldn't hear things were happening, but the mom and dad said, "Well, I don't know, can't really hear anything, but I think it's pretty good. Can't hear what anyone's saying, but the playing's really good. So what I thought we would do is to include this on a drum unit in the next couple weeks. And what I'm planning on doing is like we could talk about layering. We could talk about like one rhythm and then add another. Or you could do an ostinato and add on top of that. Or you could do like loud versus quiet and why you know sometimes you need to be quiet. Like I mean, there's so many things that you could do. You could talk about dynamics, but I think layering is really easy and it's such a fun story. I don't know that I would put this in for the sub because I think I want to teach this one. I would have too much fun with it. And I don't know, I mean, you could definitely get a sub lesson out of it because you could do the book and then you could have examples of layering. There's a really, really fun video by Daft Punk from a couple years ago called Around the World, which kids would probably recognize, but it layers in not just musical parts, but movement. And so it'd be easy, if you wanted to give this to a sub, you could, and then they could show the layering just through the video, if you want it. But, you know, no, I'm going to keep it for myself. So I have a few minutes left and I wanted to talk about technology because that is always a tough thing for the sub, especially if you have any elements that are of your lesson that really rely on technology. So here's something I did this year that I have never, ever explicitly done before. One of that is subbing in the music room, technology basics, and I go along, sub flash drive. The flash drive on my desk has a digital copy of the notes so you can open and click links to get to videos on the internet. I hope to save some time. There are also digital copies of presentations for a few of today's lessons. This is the exact flash drive I have. It is sitting on the table and it says, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. It says sub on it. But you know what? It's real easy for the sub to just miss it. So I put it in a bag that has tape over it that says sub flash drive. And also a picture of it. And you know, because sometimes it's like, oh, they're rushing in, or oh, they were covering someone else's sub duty and then they had to come do yours in just the afternoon and they didn't get a break. They haven't even gotten pee or whatever. So like giving them something sort of easy like this, it seems like I hope that it's not like, then I hope they don't think like, oh, he thinks I'm a moron. No, I don't think you're a moron. I think that you get pulled around to too many different places and you've never been in my room before, so I wanted to make this easy. So other things I've added on here, my Bose sound dock, my iPod. These are just like, I pulled these from like Google search about, you could dig an actual picture of your actual thing, but these are the exact same models and whatever the person's going to see. I have a thing about how to AirPlay to my Apple TV. I even have like, here's the icon you're going to look for. Right, and again, this took me not that long to put together. I just found I took some screenshots or found pictures, but I hope that it simplifies the process. External DVD drive, because we don't have an internal DVD drive, you know. Or like, here's the icon you're going to want for the right application, right? And there's a little like 1, 2, 3 about like, open the DVD. If it doesn't open automatically, you're going to need to open this other thing. Because like, I don't leave my Mac for them. I take my laptop home, and so they have one from the office that sometimes works. And so having this sort of checklist is really helpful. One of the things that I added that I hope is going to be great is remotes. Here are my remotes. These are the remotes you're going to need. And some of them it's like, here's the on button, here's the mute, here's the HDMI/video, here's the volume. You know, like things that they're going to need. They don't need all those buttons, but they need to know the important ones. Or my Apple TV remote is especially tricky. Even if you know Apple TV. So having that there, I hope is helpful. Some other things is that I have little sticky, I make piles of stuff for different grades. If I know I'm going to be gone, if it's an emergency sub, like, sorry, all bets are off. But when I have, I put things in piles, and I have things that say like 5th grade, seating charts, and I put them in orange, you know, backups, so that it's easy for the person to find. I just want to make their job easy and simple. You know, and there was one where like I didn't have a book or a worksheet or whatever to put it on, so I took the 2nd grade one and I put it on a card that says on the flash drive. So like, hey, you can find it and do it easy. I also, you know, I just try and make it simple for the sub so that they can get in and get that going really quickly. One more thing that is so cool that I didn't know if I was going to like or not is that I have an old iPod Touch. It has barely gotten used in the last couple of years, I don't think, because it is not as easy to use as like your phone or an iPod or an iPad, sorry, if you have. But an iPod like this is great because guess what? It has a lot of space. I loaded it up with music. I put playlists on that that say like Remarkable Farkle McBride or listening examples for XYZ or 5th grade substitute lesson. And guess what? This is real easy to just click, open iTunes, and play. And you can plug it into the Bose Sound Dock or whatever, and it makes things pretty easy. But this is old technology, right? Maybe they still make the Touch, the iPod Touch, I don't know. But most of the time you're not going to find this. So you could do, or not that you couldn't find it, but what you could do that make things easy is send an email out to parents saying like, hey, do you have an old iPod or an old iPhone or an old whatever, iPad, whatever that you don't want? I will take it and I will use it for my lessons or my sub lessons or whatever. And sometimes people are like, oh yeah, we got an old Kindle Fire. Would that work? Sure, send that in. And if they're willing to donate it, let them donate it so that you can use it. And so now I have like an iPod that's dedicated that for just my music or just my sub stuff or whatever I want that would go really easy. And this is very simple to like put in, the sub tub or whatever. And it works really well. Subs, I think, are happy to be like, oh my gosh, I can just plug it in. I don't have to like AirPlay or anything. Oh, thank goodness. I feel the same way sometimes. Like if I can get a hard connection, it makes things a lot easier. So having technology like this is great to be able to add in to your sub lessons. One more thing that I always add to my sub lessons, and I know I've shared about this before, is my substitute report. And so I like to leave this so that they can give me like a quick rundown of what happened. On the back it has a thing about behavior, went well, didn't follow rules, disruptive, blah, blah, blah. So then I can follow up with homeroom teachers as soon as I'm back. Also, it says a part that says like leave the names of any students and their teacher's name who are particularly helpful or who should be rewarded or leave me any other notes. One more thing I have to put at the bottom that I think is vitally important for me. There's a checkbox. I am a music person, comfortable teaching musical content singing. I am not a music person. I prefer videos or worksheets. That at least helps me plan. So if I know I'm getting that person again and they're like, I'd just rather have worksheets or books or whatever. This is great. Like I just want to know, So this is a freebie in my Teachers Pay Teacher store if you want it. I've also linked it on the links page along with a lot of other digital resources you might consider or you might want to use that would maybe beef up your lesson plans, along with a lot of the books and things that I shared today. So a lot of those are on the links page. And again, you can get to that by either going to my blog, makemomentsmatter.org, and clicking on the links, or you can, at the bottom of the caption for this Facebook video or in my LinkedIn profile on Instagram, you can just go straight there to the links page. Anyway, like I said, this remotes or technology guide or whatever, it took me maybe 15 or 20 minutes to do, but now I have a thing where I can just change out, as needed, but it makes it easier for the sub, I hope. And even if you don't go through and do like fun digital like arrows that are color coded, just you can put a picture of your remote and handwrite in. I just was like being fancy, I guess. But you can just go and write that in, and that is immensely helpful for the sub. Just imagine if you're a music teacher walking to some other music teacher's room and they have different technology than you, and you're like, I'm a competent person, but I don't know how to make this whatever work, Imagine that you're a sub and you don't normally teach music, and you need that little help. So I'm hoping that this makes the sub's life just a little bit easier. Okay, I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to just do a couple quick wrap-up things. So, as I mentioned before, I'm doing 2 digital workshops, one this Saturday, one the following Saturday. This Saturday is through Tidewater Area ORF Chapter. You can go register for that online if you want. The next one is through Greater Milwaukee, and that is in 2 weeks. So a week from Saturday, you can register on their website if you want, but open to anyone, whether you're a part of their chapter or not. And hoping that that's a fun chance. I'd love to have all of you join us. So, but anyway, that's an option for you if you want. And as I also said, I'm still taking ideas and suggestions for books about Indigenous folks who are music makers or dancers or somehow connected to the musical world. I'd love to have more of those ideas. So please send me more emails and messages with those ideas. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, I hope this gives you a few ideas of things you can put in your sub lesson plan or how you can plan. Again, you don't have to make it like Wonder Woman lessons or Superman lessons or whatever. It's okay to just leave some options and let the sub do their thing, because they're going to do it anyway. So give them some options that you think are great, and then enjoy your time off, or don't stress about school. So thanks so much for coming along, everyone. Thanks for your comments and your ideas, and I hope I'll see you again next week for week number 10 of Musical Mondays. Bye, everyone.